My guest today is Pete McCall. He has been a friend for a while. He is a 25-year industry expert in the health and wellness field. He's a father of two. He's a rugby player, and he has written two very interesting books. One on intensity and aging. One on working out smarter to maximize the maturation of our vintage. We talk about. Oh gosh, a lot of really interesting things. We talk about weed, we talk about booze, we talk about research and fitness and how they can correlate to work against or for the athlete or the observer. We talk intermittent fasting, we talk rugby versus football, and it's just two guys chatting it up. And I hope that you enjoy my conversation as much as I had a good time talking with Pete McCall. Pete McCall.
Yo, hold on.
Holding.
There we go. For some reason, it'll default my speaker to my microphone,
Uh,
and I don't have the headphones.
I'm fitness. I'm fitness. I don't know anything about
Yeah, right.
technology. Yeah. That's
Oh, yeah, no, it does that automatically. I don't know why. I don't know what's happening, but it's all good. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm not satisfied with this camera angle here, so I'm gonna let's just do the old boring stuff real quick.
So what is DECA? That looks like they're kind of like
That's what I said last week. Deca is Yancey Culp's brainchild. He approached Joe DeSena that's better. Hello.
Yeah.
Approached Joe DeSena for our listeners and viewers. That's the founder of Spartan Race, pretty much changing the world. And basically, it's like they're taking on high rocks and turf games and CrossFit a little bit for people who are sick of throwing barbells around and as if there were such a thing. DECA is decathlon, right? 10 events. And there are three flavors, I guess. There's DECA Strong, DECA Mile, and DECA Fit. And you've got the same 10 events, which is going to, I believe it's going to have to keep them innovating because it's fresh now, but you can only row, slam ball, farmer's carry, torque tank, and ski erg so many times before people, it's like, oh, it's Hunter McIntyre and, somebody else like at the top forever and ever and ever because they've become so efficient at it. So I think they're going to have to keep innovating. So you got those 10 workouts. DECA Strong is just the workouts. DECA Mile is you do one workout, which is just a set really. And then you run 160 meters and then you come back and do the second dealio, 160 equaling 10, thus the name Mile. DECA Fit, same format, except you run 500 meters. So it's a 5K, different beast altogether. That's it, man. I just heard about it.
Which one did you win? I mean, was that your first one you did and you won it? That's pretty cool.
Thanks. Yeah. I thought so too. Let me, I think yeah, there we go. I don't want to get any feedback going. So now we're here. Can you hear me?
And just give you a heads up in case anybody else is listening. I don't know what's going on with my neighbors upstairs. They seem to be going through a little rough patch this last week. Their volume has been up a little bit the last week. So if we hear them, and it sounds like they're both home right now, and so if they all of a sudden the voices get a little loud, I haven't heard any gunshots. I haven't heard any bodies falling on the floor, but I'm just kind of like,
Okay.
This last year and a half has been so stressful for everybody that it's just I hope they can sort it out, whatever they've been going through.
I figured out the solution to that a long time ago, Pete. I know you don't drink, but I'm going to drink for the both of us.
Yeah, that and look, I mean, come on, we're in California, so I'm a big fan of THC, but I stopped using that as well when I got the contract for my latest book. I'm like, yeah, I kind of need to put that on the back burner for a little bit. So
It does. I am also a big fan, we'll just call it. But if you got a bunch of emails to write, good luck. That'll slow you down and make you rewrite the same sentence more than 5 times.
That's exactly why I'm like, you know what, I'm trying to focus on writing for a little while, and
Yeah.
I was trying to be cool and be like, oh yeah, I can write. Well, forget about it, man. You stare at your thing, and you're like, wait, I've written the same sentence 6 different ways, and it does. I'm not one of the, it doesn't work for me. So anyway,
Yeah.
but that to say, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't mean I'm not a big proponent of it for other
Yeah.
people. And I'm a big, hey, look, if people can drink alcohol, Phil, I'm like one of these. I'm like, why we should have? I mean, marijuana should be legal, 100%.
I absolutely agree with you 100%. And you know what? I don't know where this conversation was really gonna go today, but if we're talking about weed and booze already, it's gonna be
Yeah,
a great talk.
but
I want to rewind a little bit because
got it.
some of the people in my audience don't know who you are. This is a very informal conversation between two relatively cool people. I don't know. I'm all right, I guess.
I'm old,
And
dude. I'm not cool.
I
I have
well,
daughters. I have daughters that are coming into the tween phase, so I'm getting ready for the not cool phase of my life. No matter what I do, I won't be cool for the next number of years.
well, it's
I gotta accept that.
it's eye of the beholder, and I think being cool is kind of like being smart. Like if you think you're smart, you're probably not that smart, and if you think you're cool, you're probably not that cool. And I think it goes both ways. So Pete, you're cool as shit in my eyes, buddy.
Oh well, thank you. I
Um,
appreciate that.
so for those of you who do not know, Pete McCall has been in the fitness industry for like 20 plus years, something like that. And he and I met over a decade ago at a wonderful educational summit called the Institute of Motion, um, where the guys that developed the Viper. And if you're any kind of like trainer or health coach or wellness entrepreneur, you've probably heard of Viper. And if you listen to my old podcast, The Obstacle Order, Michelle Dalcourt and the director of education, Derek Price, were guests on the show. But now we've got a new show where we're not constrained by athletics and obstacle course racing. We can talk about weed and booze, and not being cool. And so Pete and I have stayed in contact over the past 11, 12 years, and I see him at conferences, and he's always got this kind of swagger of like, I'm going to get shit done, about him. And one of the reasons that I always kind of, you know, you know, had my eye on whatever Pete was doing. It might be 3-4 years between run-ins, but there's a lot of bullshit in the fitness industry. And especially when you go to massive conferences where they're selling you like wristbands that have elastic that's attached to your feet, and like, like headphones that are going to make you warm up faster and increase your max lifts and stuff. And there's science behind some of that stuff, but a lot of it is just absolute excrement. And I feel like the electrons that are flying around the analogy of that fitness conference, like the ones that are, real recognize real, as they say. Pete's approach to fitness is it's practical, it's applicable, it's helpful, and it's not like trying to sell. It's hey, here is what I know, here's my experience, and if you want to be a better person from it, then I'm here for you. That's a paraphrase from my outsider's perspective. I appreciate that. Was a compliment if it didn't come off as one.
No,
Um,
no, I appreciate that, and honestly, I thank you for that, and I enjoy. I got into the education side of this business a number of years ago because I enjoy learning, and frankly, I don't really know much. I just read what other people study, and I try to synthesize it and try to say, okay, how do I apply that? How does that apply? It's one thing to read a research study about whatever. It's like, how do we apply that, and what's the practical application of it? And that's what I've tried to do the last number of years, is try to position myself on that side of it as an education guy and as an education consultant, is kind of bridging that gap between what the lab coats are doing and what they're studying and what that means for us. And the interesting thing is, and I've had this conversation a number of times on my podcast with researchers, is and I'd be interested in your input on this, Phil, with all the stuff that you do, because you're very athletic, is oftentimes research is following what's happening in the field. like what you might be doing with obstacle course racing or what you might be doing with like a decafit type competition is we kind of know what it's doing for our body, but we don't really quantify it until somebody in a lab coat says, "Oh, okay, here's what it's doing." But on that note, I mean, do you think research is really that important, or do you think it's more of I'm interested in your feedback on this, or do you think of just kind of like learning by experience is one of the best ways we should learn as we do fitness?
If we're talking about fitness, I think that, yeah, research is important. Um, Once you get past I love the emotional side of it. I love the way this makes me feel. I love the community of it. I love the results. But when, there's that kind of entry level, um, what is the word? Not plebeian, but kind of like, um, civilian, aspect of like, oh, I'm going to go do a Spartan race, like where I was with Tough Mudder, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, yeah, 11 years ago. It's like, oh, I'm going to go do this because it sounds awesome. Right. And then like awesome turns into, I'm going to prepare for a harder race and I'm going to refine my tactics a little bit. And then you start to kind of read a few articles, and then it's like, oh, I've been invited to world championships. Like I better really get my shit together here. And start looking at nutrition 10 months out. Do I have extra weight on me? Is my VO2 max where it needs to be? Do I have any, am I drinking and smoking a lot of weed? The weed's not going to really affect you that much, but the alcohol absolutely will. Um, so yes, I think research does come into play when people decide that, I want to take it from the consumer to the prosumer to the professional or the semi-professional. And then, but this is, it's a pyramid. It just goes up. I've got all sorts of like analogies with my hands. I'm like Ricky Bobby today. I don't know what to do with my hands, man.
No, but I like no, but I like that, right? Because yeah, I mean, we know that exercise is important, and going out and being active every day, you don't need a lot of research for that. Find something you enjoy doing, find something that feels good, and do it. That becomes the bottom line. Do something, get your heart rate up, and breathe quickly for 30 minutes a day. Whatever, if you enjoy Zumba, God bless. You're not going to kill yourself doing Zumba the wrong
Dude,
way.
have you done Zumba before? It is
Oh yeah,
really hard. It is really hard. I mean, it's
it's
very
hard.
difficult. Zumba is, you're just like, I can, you realize you've been dancing in the club all these years with only your right side being dominant. And then you try to do the same thing on your left side and it's just all thumbs.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I was the Zumba class I took, I became aware very quickly that I was reminded very quickly that dancing is definitely not my forte. But I do, I don't train many clients right now, but I have told a couple of kids I do train. I've been training mostly high school athletes the last year or two.
yeah.
And I've been telling them, guys, you got to start dancing because what I've been told by other strength coaches is when I've asked them like what's the common denominator among all their pro athletes, a lot of them will say the ability to dance. Whatever sport it is, anybody who ascends to the professional level has that innate rhythm, that innate timing, that innate movement coordination that makes them a good dancer. And that right there is why I never ascended past Division three. Right?
So,
I never made it past like men's club sports.
well, so, that's interesting. And gosh, there's a lot of points that I want to touch on because, this conversation is opening up very, very quickly. But we've got weed and booze that I want to get back to. And we've got dance and flow, actually, the flow state. And before we get into that, because I think that's a rabbit hole that I'd love to go down with you. Just before that, we were talking about, you mentioned, is research important? I believe that's what you said. Is research important? So I think that research is important. That's kind of a twofold thing, and you can feel free to add or subtract to this. Research is important when you want to get better at what you're doing, but also we'll call it maybe empirical data, I guess. When you're trying to convince somebody that the path that they're on is going the opposite way, because we're only looking at really half of that spectrum. Like to get to the starting line of an event, that could be a very long road for someone. And the psychology of, calories in versus calories out. Yes, that is weight loss, but there's also, you can't eat 2,000 calories of Burger King, as delicious as it may be, and not expect the cellular inflammation or the inflammatory, whatever their inflammatory markers come with that. Depression has been linked to junk food also. The chemistry of one's brain who eats that garbage changes. So getting them to get out of that groove of comfort, basically of this makes me feel good, so I want to buy more of it. Showing the research that, hey, you're gonna die if you're not. People don't care about being fat or whatever I'm obese. It's a condition is called now. They're okay with that because now they're special, and it's like, oh, well, you've got a disease, so you don't have to do anything. It's not your fault.
And that's the worst thing we could have done I mean, I understand obesity is a disease. It's a very serious issue, but to kind of almost excuse and it's not the same. I mean, look, technically I would be considered obese and I carry a few extra pounds. I'm never shy about admitting that. However, I always look at what's your activity level and because fitness, and I always say this, Phil, is fitness is more about ability and work capacity, not necessarily appearance. But to your point,
absolutely, 100%.
But I love what you said earlier, and I love what you did with research and contextualize it, because I agree 100%. What I was asking that research question about is it's hard because I think sometimes we try to be. I was kind of making fun of myself as an educator because sometimes in education we anchor ourselves so tightly to the research that's like, well, this is what the research says. But when you look at it in the greater world, there's so much variability between sleeping, eating, nutrition, other activity, right, other stressors, that research can give us an idea of what might happen when certain variables are applied, but in no way guarantees that something will happen. And so that's why I kind of wanted to bring that up is there's no really guarantees based on it. And I'm going to come back to what you said. I mean, this whole idea of processed food, I interviewed a woman on my podcast maybe 3 months ago, a doctor who studies processed food addiction. And Phil, she blew me away when, if you remember, I think I'm a couple years older than you, but in the 80s, there's a big merger between R.J. Reynolds, a tobacco company, and Nabisco, which makes sugary, sweet, salty snacks. So what did the tobacco industry do for years? And she pointed this out in the interview. What did the tobacco industry do for years? For years, tobacco researched how to make people addicted to tobacco. So what do you think probably happened when they bought Nabisco? They applied the same research to Oreos, to Twinkies or Hostess, but they applied the same research to say, okay, we know that we can get people addicted to our product doing this. Now let's take this other product here, low cost, high margin, easy to consume. Can we make Oreos addictive? Can we make Nilla wafers addictive? And so you have a multi-billion-dollar industry that has. So you're on the money, right? I mean, it's like, and just a month ago, I was talking with a friend of mine who is he's a chief science officer at a biopharmaceutical company, a PhD, and we were talking about when it comes down to what we do, and this is where I've been going in the last number of years with the type of work I've been doing, is everything is biochemical in our body. And that's really where the research can show some really interesting information, because we know if we eat excess sugar, it elevates our insulin levels. It takes our insulin levels out of whack. If we don't get great sleep, it can change our levels of ghrelin and leptin, two hormones that can control hunger. And so it really is, I would implore people, if you really want to understand kind of like how your body, if you really want to take that deep understanding, start understanding like the biochemistry. Not that you need to go study biochem, but understand a little bit more about hormones, understand about cortisol, understand about how to manipulate testosterone or growth hormone, because all these are anytime we exercise. I mean, I always make this joke, Phil. Nobody walks into the gym on a Monday going, yeah, today's my endocrine system day. Nobody's walking in like, today I'm going to jack up my, Monday's chest day, right? Nobody goes to the gym saying, yeah, I'm training my endocrine system today. But in reality, anytime we exercise, anytime we experience stress on our body, we're manipulating the endocrine system. We're manipulating the hormones, yet it's something that we don't really pay much attention to.
So all right, so Monday's endocrine system day. Yeah. So Tuesday is going to be hormone system day, and Wednesday we're going to be experiencing a little bit of buildup. So maybe we'll make Wednesday a regeneration day. What's Thursday, Friday going to be?
Well, it depends on the loading system, right? It is one would be like a endocrine day where you do heavy loading to manipulate testosterone and growth hormone, and then the next day would be like a tissue regen day where you do low intensity stuff to elevate circulation. Then the third day would be, to borrow from Exos, make an energy system day. Are you going to go steady state? Are you going to go interval? I mean, it is just, and that would depend. I would argue that if you had a great night's sleep, jack it up with interval training. If your kid kept you up or whatever, you're goofing around a little bit too late than you should have, and you didn't
Hmm.
get great sleep, do steady state. Bring the intensity level down a little bit.
So here's one thing. Hang on, we got a little visitor. Excuse me.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I can still hear you. Hey,
yeah,
buddy,
yeah.
you coming in?
No, that's awesome. How old now? How old is he now?
Oh, oh, this little guy is 16 months. Hi to
Oh,
Pete. Hi. Hi there.
hey.
So here's one thing that a lot of people don't think about, and it is the periodization, right? They're only thinking about, and then this is a very American way to think, because like, in what I mean, like American business,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
only concerned about this quarter and next
yeah.
quarter. We're not thinking 10 years out. We're not thinking kind of European Buffett style investing in ourselves. We're looking at just get it done now, and we'll worry about next quarter. And if you take that macro element and you tune it down to the micro, like if I'm going to do, that whole like no days off hashtag is absolute garbage, because that's not how it works. Hey, I need that, buddy. Mwah, I need that. Daddy needs that. He's talking right now. So the whole no days off thing is like absolute garbage. Like no days off, sure, until your body breaks, and or you have
Or and here's
degeneration of some sort.
And
Sorry, go
here's the
ahead.
well, let's say no days off. I mean, you take that mindset. No days off might mean going for a 3 mile walk around the neighborhood where you're breathing a little quicker than normal, but you're not super elevating your heart rate. Because I would
Hmm.
argue you're not taking an off day specifically, but you have a very minimal load. Who called it that? PTA Global called it working in, where you would kind
Yes,
of like just download it. I mean, it doesn't because I don't disagree with the no days off hashtag, but it doesn't mean every day has to be a high intensity day,
that's
especially once
true.
you get up to the age of 40 or 45. Because I have
That's
to
true.
say, I mean, I turned 49 this year. I turned 49 in a few weeks after recording this. And I have to tell you, man, my recovery, like the days I get after it takes me about 2 days before I feel 100% ready to rock and roll. Whereas 10, 15 years ago in the early to mid 2000s, I could rock hard. I could go hard 3 or 4 days a week. Now
Yeah.
I look at maybe 2 or 3 days a week.
And
It doesn't
how
mean I do it. It just means
and
I
how
do. I'm smarter about it.
I'm sorry, can you say that last part again? It kind of cut out.
No, but what I look at is like whereas in my late 20s and early 30s, I would train hard 4 or 5 days a week. I would train hard most days of the week.
Right.
Right now that I'm in my late 40s, I still train really hard, but only two
Hmm.
or three days a week. And the other days, I just kind of I don't not exercise. I just don't stress the system as much, or I stress
Hmm.
the system in a different way, doing mobility as opposed to heavy loading.
And how important, and we're unloading, we're unpacking, like open all these different boxes, but it's interesting. I'm having a good time, so let's
Yeah.
just keep rolling. How important would you say that your nutrition, whatever it is more important now that you're late 40s, or less important than when you were in your late 20s, late
Oh,
30s?
and listeners can't see me nodding my head. I mean, that nutrition fill is my biggest struggle. I mean, I'm a sweet tooth, and
Oh,
and I'm
really?
one
Okay.
I'm one of these guys like I like a lot of people where it's like, oh, I exercise. I don't really need to worry about. I exercise more because I enjoy it. I exercise for the health benefits. I gave up my runway modeling career a long time ago. I gave up my shirtless modeling career a long time ago. I just don't. I accept it in all seriousness. I came to a realization a long time ago. I just don't. Even when I've been my leanest, I don't get that cut. I don't have. I have a German average body type. Even when I've been below 190 pounds, I just don't get cut. I get lean, but I don't get a lot of definition. So I
Hmm.
stopped worrying about that a long time ago. But what I have noticed now is if I get off my diet for more, and I hate using the word diet, but if I get off a healthy eating plan for more than a couple days, man, I feel it. I feel like crap. If
Right.
I I try not to eat too many fried foods. I try not to eat too much pizza. But if I have one of those weekends where it's like pizza on a Friday night, a burger and fries with my kids on Saturday, and then maybe a stop at the frozen yogurt, man, on Sunday, it's honestly, I don't drink, but on Sunday I feel hungover from just the crap. I mean,
Yeah.
and it really, the one thing that I've been doing for the last 2 years, I mean, 2.5 years now, and I'm not a proponent. I really try to stay in my lane. I'm a strength and conditioning guy. I understand movement. I understand exercise. And I'm always happy to defer to the nutritionists and the people that are in, that do that. But my primary care physician really was a big fan of intermittent fasting. And I started reading about it. And there's a lot of, I've been doing IF. Like I won't eat. We're recording this 10 something a.m. Pacific time. I won't eat till about 4 today, and I'll probably do a little workout before I eat. And what I like about what I've learned about intermittent fasting, what I've read about it, and I would really encourage people to go out and read about it themselves. And again, understanding that research only gives us a bit of the picture. But what I like about intermittent fasting, Phil, is I'm not worried about making breakfast when I get up. I don't need to worry about trying to eat during, like whereas before, like, oh, I have to eat breakfast. That's the most important meal. And I have to eat and have these healthy snacks. But what we're learning is that stressing the system, going periods of time without eating is actually better for us than eating 6 meals a day. That old adage from years ago, well, you need to eat small meals throughout the day to keep your metabolism going. Well, the evidence has given us some different thoughts about that. And the other big thing that really, when you look at the literature, and
You need to buy more of our food products is what you need to do to keep your
like,
metabolism
yeah,
going.
look at that. There's probably that, but when you look at the
Yeah.
literature, there are two ways to slow down the aging process. The two ways to slow down aging are A, exercise, and B, caloric restriction. And so when they look at the benefits of intermittent fasting, it comes back to hormones. It regulates insulin, it regulates ghrelin, and it helps with mitochondrial biogenesis. And so really when you look at it, and so that's why I do it. I don't do it from a weight management point of view. I do it more from a health management point of view. Anything I do is more health management as opposed to weight management.
Yeah, I totally get you. So here's a question for you. I mean, I will fast. I tinker with it. I have a relationship with food, having been a chef and growing up in the restaurant industry. I have a little bit different relationship with food than most people do. It's not like I mean, well, I do like to eat, but I also like to eat for the, I mean, I guess why people like certain wines, for the quality of the food. Like I care more about like a food and talking about food than I will a sports team. Because I don't know. I just, anyway,
Well, let me ask you, let's pause on this for a second because I love
sure.
this. I didn't realize you were trained as a chef, or you worked in the restaurant business.
So I was trained as a chef in the industry. They'll call it Maverick style. Because when I was 11, my father opened a restaurant. He was like, "Guess what? You got a job. You're a dishwasher." I'm like, "Oh, okay." Um,
That's
and
awesome, though. I
and
love that.
and yeah, well, you grow up fast, and you either sink or swim in that industry. You either love it or hate it, and it'll chew you up and spit you out real fast. But it developed in me a very strong work ethic. When I got up through the ranks, basically started at my parents' place for a few years, and then on and off through high school because school was taking up more and more of my time as it should. And then in college, when I went to college at Charleston, I ran two separate restaurants while I was there. And I mean, technically, my biggest title was sous chef, but I was running kitchens and yeah, living that life, which is not a life that I would wish on anyone above the age of 30. Because it's I mean, unless your shit's just really together, which I mean, whose is when they're under 30. But yeah, so I learned trial by fire. A lot of chefs and other kitchen rats, as we were called, just teaching you what to do, how to do it. A lot of late nights, and yeah, so that's why my relationship with food is a little bit different, because it was literally my profession for when I retired. It was half my life basically. I stopped doing that when I was 22, and then went into fitness. So,
That's interesting. Yeah.
so here's the question. And I also, I guess, like if I'm going to be like racing Spartan or racing OCR in general or any kind of competition, like I I feel like I need to eat more than once a day. Like I need like you can't be out on the trail for 10 miles and be like, I'm only going to eat once because your expenditure doesn't match. But that's a different, we're comparing apples to oranges there, I think, athletically. Here's
Yeah.
my question to you. If you're, what is your, have you established what your daily caloric intake should be to maintain and or whatever you're trying to do with your weight, like and the second part of the question is, how are you able to get all of those calories in that late in the day? So if it's like 1800, like that's a lot of calories. That's my
Yeah,
question.
it's funny. I've done those numbers. I no, it's a good question because I've done those numbers over the years, and I kind of have an idea. I have an idea of how much protein I need to eat. I have an idea of how many fruits and vegetables, and I really try to eat between like 3 or 4 in the afternoon and between like 9, 10 at night. Because what I've read, and again, I might be wrong on this, but what I've read is being awake doesn't really affect your metabolism more than being asleep, and it really is.
Would agree with that.
You can, other people would recommend eating more in the morning and then taking the rest of the day off, whatever. But I find I'm more productive. I look at more productivity. But to your point, it's 100% right. Now, if I were training for something, like when I was training, I went to an old boys rugby tournament a little bit more than a month ago. And so I was upping my volume of strength and power. And that's where I got off my nutrition and was really just trying to eat to support being more active. And because I was going to be playing front row in a rugby scrum. I wasn't really worried about being slim and slender. I need to pack on a couple extra pounds. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
but
yeah.
seriously, to do that. And so I look at, I try to monitor in terms of volume and just try not to overdo it. And really, we're to get back to the biochemistry of it. I do try to limit stuff like breads, even though we need carbohydrates. But breads are pretty much just sugar. I mean, when you look at what the flour and everything are. And I try to limit that. And in order to cure the sweet tooth, what I've been trying to do is get a pineapple and get a couple pieces, get fruit and have more. I've always had fruit available, but I'm looking at some sweeter fruits that kind of like, okay, if I'm feeling that little sugar hit, I'll have a few pieces of pineapple as opposed to even having like a quote unquote nutrition bar, which are, again, you look at the sugar content on all
Right,
that.
right, right.
So
There's your carbohydrate also.
yeah,
Um,
and I look at that the way I kind of the view I've taken, Phil, and again, this is I'm not an expert in this. This is just kind of an educated guess. Is that I really try to I do my best to try to limit processed foods
mhm.
because our body is not when you look at thousands of years of human development and it's only been 50 years that we've had chemicals in our food. There's just not a direct correlation there, and it comes back to anytime I start eating more processed food than normal for whatever reason, I feel like crap. And and there's not I love nothing more than a good burger every now and then, but you do it more than once in a while, and dude, you feel it, man. I mean,
Yeah,
you feel it.
the sluggishness in the brain. I would, so I've got a buddy of mine who's coming on, who will answer that. He's a holistic nutritionist, down to the mitochondrial effect of
Yeah.
eating processed food, and we'll get that question answered, because honestly, I'm not an expert in that either. That's why I keep people in my friend circle who are, and I'm just, hey, you spend all this time learning, I'm gonna get the answer and hopefully get the desired effect, what I can then share. And by the way, let's be honest, if you're going to go to a rugby tournament, there's a lot more things that you're going to be putting in your body, other than a few burgers. Um, as a
Yeah.
fellow rucker myself, it's like, all right, we're probably gonna have a couple beers before we get the scrum down, and then we'll sweat it out. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
And this was, but that was kind of the mindset. This was more of they called it a festival as opposed to a tournament. And what I loved about it was the rules were not that the rules were that stringent, but the rules were you either had to be over 40 or under the age of 20 to play because
Oh wow,
they wanted guys to be able to play with their kids. And if you had a high school player, if one team had a high school player on the field, the other team had to put a high school player out there
that's
because
cool.
so I mean, it was competitive. I mean, we're going live full speed. It wasn't like touch rugby, but it was more of just like we're a bunch of old men running around, just trying reliving rather than sitting there on the sidelines yelling at other people. We're
Oh
in our
yeah,
40s and 50s, and we're trying to relive our glory years of being in our 20s. And I have to say that to me, Phil, 25. I started playing rugby almost 26, 27 years ago, right out of college, and immediately immediately, that's when it kind of switched on in my brain that I was playing with guys, and I'll be interested in your experience. When you walk on a rugby club, a men's rugby club in your early 20s, there are guys on that club in their late 30s and their 40s who are still playing rugby, who are still fit and training, and they're good rugby players. And I'm like, wait a minute, these guys are 20 years older than me, and they're still in this kind of shape. I want to be like them when I grow up.
Yep.
And now at this old boys tournament, I was talking to this one guy who was in his early 60s. He was from New Zealand, so he grew up playing rugby, but he's a CEO in his early 60s, and the dude still plays whenever he can. He's like, mate, he's like, if I die on the pitch, I die on the pitch. He's like, but this is just what I want. For him, he lives to be able to play rugby, and I've told myself I want to try to play every decade until I get to my 60s. So I've played a number of times in my 40s. I turn 50 next year, and I plan on playing over 45 old boys. And then I'll evaluate when I get closer to 60. I'll worry about it then.
Here's my hypothesis on. My hypothesis on basically old guys and girls being able to play rugby into their whenever. If you look and this comes from what I witnessed. I learned from Glenn Pendlay. My barbell background and barbell sciences, which is limited, very limited compared to some, but I know a thing or two. And when I was at their facility, I saw these guys who were easily in their 60s, and they're just massive. They're just big people because the lifestyle that they've chosen of moving heavy masses, loading their entire skeletal, endocrine, soft tissue systems. And I mean, cardio respiratory system also, because you're literally loading up your lungs, right? Venous and capillary systems. When you embrace that lifestyle and you constantly practice, what barbell sciences are, very controlled, explosive, low injury actually. I'm not going to say impact because it's more loading. It's not impact like rugby or football. But if you take football and you take rugby and you look at the injury rate now, and I'm speaking out of my lane here also, but I don't hear a lot about concussions in rugby, mental illness in later years in rugby. And nobody's wearing pads. You might have a little diaper on your head. I wore one of those for a little bit because you get bonked around, but it's not anywhere near the injury rate and the mental illness rate of football. And here's my hypothesis on that is football. What do? You stop, go, you stop, go, you stop, go. That allows people to get massively huge. There is an aerobic aspect to football, of course, but not like rugby. Rugby, you can't maintain that kind of muscle mass. No, because you're running for 90 minutes, right? And so when you build up basically, the strength of a bull or a truck, and it's just bang, 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 bang. You've got that strength element that is through the freaking roof. That there are human limitations to what can be taken, right? Physically absorbed is what I mean when I say that. There's limitations to that. So you've got these abnormally strong humans that are colliding into a protected frame, right? So if I run into you and it's just Phil on Pete, little Phil on Pete action, and it's just that hurts. That hurts you as much as it hurts me, probably. I mean, I might be, down, or I'm coming to check you, and but I'm going to feel that impact, right? Skeletally speaking, and the reverberations throughout my organs and everything in my brain. In football, you're artificially padded, and if you aren't ready for that hit, you're basically, the bumper of a car that's crumpling and sending shockwaves up the body, right? So if you've got like these Mack trucks and bulls mashing into each other, they're artificially protected, and they're also not artificially, but they're tuned up to be power athletes, because the guys are going to be hitting you like that. They're not going to be running long plays, and then you compare that to Rutgers who are just nasty sons of bitches who can run, who are, they're not as big as football players because, it's kind of like, forgive the analogy here, it's like Homo erectus versus Neanderthal. Like Homo erectus basically won because they could run long distances and they could coordinate, hunts or communicate. And so you've got someone who's not as huge, can run, is really freaking dense from hundreds of small hits, from from years of experience. And I'll wrap this up here in just a second. I know I'm kind of going. And you've got that body that's made, that's molded, and it is, in my opinion, it is much more resilient than a body that's like, all right, I'm a physical specimen. I'm deadly in a phone booth, maybe. And I wrap myself in protective equipment and I freaking explode for a very specific job, which is lineman, D-back, wide out, whatever. And then you got Rutgers, who was like, yeah, what is like 4 positions, and then everybody kind of does their own thing in the middle. I played rugby for like a year, so I don't know it too well, but I got in there and smashed my head around, and I was like, like there's a density that your body adapts to. Most adaptable machine in the human is the human body, right? So you literally get denser. Like it's like our buddy McCall says, it's like shaking a farmer's hand versus shaking a city boy's hand. There's a big difference.
It's very similar. No, it's a great analogy because it's very similar to like martial arts. And when you look at it, and that's where, I've coached high school rugby and I've coached youth rugby. And what I've told parents is when you're in football, you're starting from 5 to 10 meters apart, or 5 to 10 yards apart, I think in terms of meters. But you're starting, 5 to 10 yards apart. And when you run into each other, you mentioned it's like 2 trucks colliding. Whereas rugby is a constantly moving sport, and it's very rare that you're coming at you. More of the times the tackles are from the side, and so It's more like a judo takedown as opposed to coming at it like a strong safety onto a receiver from a long distance. So you don't get the blow up. And plus, to your point, if we had a Pete on Phil or Phil on Pete collision, and I try to do that hit on you like you see in football, I'm gonna break my collarbone. You can't put that much impact into the body, and I would never go up high. And I've seen. There's one little girl. I was helping my friend coach his daughter. It was a mixed boys and girls team. I think they were U10 or U12, so they were all under the age of 10 or 12 years old. They must have been under the age of 10. But this little girl, Phil, was one of the smallest girls on the field, one of the smallest players. And I saw her wrap up and take down the biggest boys on the field. She was like literally like a spider monkey because we teach how to wrap the legs. And dude, she would come flying in from nowhere, and you'd see this like little burst of brown hair from underneath her scrum cap, wrap this big dude up in the legs, and all of a sudden he's going woo, boom, and falling down. But I really think, I think, because when you look at it, you talk about those weightlifters, you talk about martial artists, anybody who does activity throughout their lifespan, as long as they don't stop that activity, they're going to be in great shape. Whether it could be powerlifting, it could be ballroom dancing, it could be Aikido, whatever it is. And here's the thing that blew my mind, and I'll be interested in your reaction on this.
Yeah.
Is when I first became a personal trainer in the late 1990s, and even for years, all the research, and this is why I'm a little dubious on research, all the research on working with older adults has been on sedentary populations, has been on older adults who have not exercised. They don't have a history of fitness.
Right.
But think about it. The modern fitness industry, Phil, goes back to early 1970s, maybe the late 1960s. So if you had somebody who's 25 years old in 1972, and that's when I was born. If they're 25 years old in 1972 and they joined their first gym, they did jazzercise or they started doing Nautilus circuit training, and they've been exercising for the last 50 years, they're now in their 70s and they're relatively fit. And guess what? We have zero data. We have relatively zero data on that. This is the first time that scientists have ever been able to study humans who've been exercising throughout their entire lifespan. And I've only seen 1 or 2 studies on the effects of that, and the research is really remarkable because it's showing that basically exercise freezes time on your muscles. So whatever age, so if you're 22, 23, and you started exercising, you got out of the restaurant industry, you got into fitness, and you've been exercising relatively high intensity, and you maintain that for the next 30, 40 years, by the time you're in your 60s and 70s, you'll still be able to do DECA. You'll still be able to do OCR. You might do it at a less intensity. It might take you a little longer, but you'll have that ability. And right now, what we would do, I'll finish up with this. Right now, what we would do,
take your time.
we would tell somebody over the age of 60, no, don't do that. You're 62 years old. Don't do that. Meanwhile, the guy that I was playing rugby with a few weeks ago, who's 62 years old, is like, I've been doing this for my entire life. Why wouldn't I do it? Why wouldn't I go do this? So we don't know the long-term effects of exercise in terms of what it allows people to do. Meaning that if you're listening to this and you enjoy whatever your favorite activity is, your age, forget your age. Just go out and enjoy your favorite activity, but be mindful that you might need more recovery, and be mindful you might need to prepare a little bit differently than you did maybe 10, 15 years ago.
I think the might be is a definitely, like like that's the one thing that has to bookend your athletic expression, whatever it may be, is you gotta, it's like, okay, hands above the head, touch your toes, and I'm ready to play. Yeah. And now it's like, nah, man, I timed when I got serious with OCR, I'm taking literally, my warm up was a very systematic 32 minutes of, if I'm not sweaty, if I'm not like, and the reason that is I would get into, quick tangent, I would get into my races and I wouldn't, like, I could feel my full aerobic shift from like starting line to, okay, now we're in that state of flow, which I want to take back to the dance thing in a moment. That took about 3 miles. And I was talking to one of my mentors and I'm like, man, 3 miles, like, why does it take so long to get there? And like a magician revealing his tricks, the answer was so simple. Once he told me, he's like, well, looks like you're going to need to run 3 miles before the race starts, or come up with something comparable to that so that you're ready to go. And I'm like, oh, shit, I guess you're right, man. And once I started doing that, it was a whole nother thing. Back to what you were saying about the prep and recovery. I think it's absolutely crucial that you look at prep and recovery as part of the lifestyle. I'm not just gonna. I mean, I have clients that are, they're like, the CrossFit, and I put the bar in Fran and Helen and whatever, and then I'm gonna go get a couple beers, and I'm like, okay, like, that's cool. I'm not a like beer after Murph. I don't do that anymore. Like, it's maybe just for the novelty of it, but it doesn't make me feel good. So I think that preaching the bookend of prep and the other bookend of regen is absolutely crucial to the success of an athlete. Whoa. Excuse me, that was my watch talking to me.
But think about it. Under 30, you can get away with that, dude. I mean, you can get away with
absolutely
crashing yourself and going and having a couple beers and getting that pub hamburger and all that. I mean, you can get away with that. But once you get around 40, you're like, you can't wake up and bounce up and keep going the next day.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want it, because you don't want to feel like, this is one thing I've learned later in my athletic career and whatever it was. It is, you don't want to feel like death the next day. You don't want to feel like you've been hit by a truck. That's for sure. Okay, so let me shift back to like the second thing that we started talking about, and it was your athletes dancing. And forgive me, I forgot what you said, but did we establish why you thought dance was important? I know I have my opinion on it, but I wanted to ask you first.
Well, this is a friend of mine who, this guy, Phil, I was at his studio the other day, and I've seen this guy since he was I've known this guy since he was a grad student a number of years ago, and I've seen him he started training high school baseball players. He had almost no equipment. He now has a decent little gym here in San Diego, and he has, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 guys in the major leagues at various levels of minor league and the MLB. But he started working with high school players. He got them to college, then he helped them get pro contracts. And so he's been doing this about a decade now, since about 2000. I think he got his master's degree in 2011 or 2012. And I just really, I've loved seeing him grow and evolve. And he was the one who told me, when I was asking him, like, hey, how can you tell which one of your guys, which one of your kids might make it from high school ball to getting a contract? And he goes, dude, it's the ability to dance. He's like, if they can dance, if they can keep the rhythm, if they can move, he's like, they have a much better risk. They have a much better, not risk, but a much better chance of playing at the top levels. It just what I think that means, and I'll be interested in your take is it's that innate athleticism and timing. If you can control your vestibular system and your temporal system to music, then whether you're playing baseball or football or volleyball or whatever that elite sport is, you just have an innate. You're in tune with your machine, and you can function at a higher level than somebody like me who may not be able to dance as well.
I think that, so first of all, yes, I agree. And I think it's for a paralleling reason. I feel like there's a rhythm. If you break it down to its smallest components, just my micro to meta again, everything happens from the sun rising and setting every day to sleep cycles to gastrointestinal cycles to how and when we drink coffee to probably what kind of coffee you get. Everything happens in a pattern or rhythm, right? And if you're able to find, I mean, what is the rhythm of our body, right? It's our heartbeat and our breath, right? We always have that. And when we have music, whatever the cadence be, 70 BPM, 140 BPM, to find that, and like, let's say you're just like, do that conga, like that's a very fast. And if you're moving your feet to that, eventually you stop thinking about step, 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 and you start having a good time with it. When you stop thinking about it, it goes from, and you start having a good time, it goes from cognitive, the three stages of learning: cognitive, dissociative, to autonomous. And when you get to that autonomous phase, you're flowing, right? Let's say you've got the ball, you're headed down the pitch, and we're run 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. My beat is different than your beat, but if I see and I'm looking like right here, center mass, I've got 5 men marked, and they're all 1 2 1 2 1 2, heading a specific direction. I change my beat to my rhythm, and I watch them change their beat. It's like following a dance, right? Except you're trying to lose your dance partner when you're on the sport field, right? So it's a different objective, but I feel that when you know how to dance, biomechanically, you become more in tune with your body and what it's capable of. Left foot in, left foot. It's like running a speed ladder, right? A speed ladder is like the FMS of dancing, and it can be fun and it can be very clinical and kind of boring. But when you're dancing and it's 1 2 3 4, if you're an athlete of any type, it's probably you're out of your wheelhouse, and it's kind of novel until you start having a good time. You're like, oh, this is not only novel, it's a new skill and it's fun. And then it's going to transfer over into whatever your sport is, because you've unlocked that 5-10% more of your athletic ability, and you can probably relax when you start picking out rhythms more. Like when I started getting into music, I could pick out rhythms in walking with my son. I'm walking 1 2 3 4. He's 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 because he's got little bitty legs, and you start thinking about those things more often. I think that's my take on why dance, from a very non-clinical perspective, on why it helps sport a lot.
You tapped on something, and I know we want to mention this too, is talking about the flow state. Because if you're trying to figure out dance, like I get my daughters ready for school in the morning, and they're in elementary school right now. So sometimes to get them moving a little bit, we have a little dance party. And,
nice.
And I'm not effective at it, but I try to get them going, and I try to use music to kind of pick up their energy in the morning. But when you learn something, flow state. Flow state is when you lose yourself in the moment. So like when you're running an OCR, when you're running a race, you're doing a competition, you're not thinking about your kid, you're not thinking about work, you're not thinking about other stuff. You're focused on the next 10 meters, you're focused on the next obstacle, you're focused on the next lift. That's flow. I mean, that is getting in flow of where you're not the external, you're not really aware of external things, but you're focused on what's in front of you. One of the main flow triggers are challenge skills. You want to bend but not break. Meaning that you want to, if you can get over a 6-foot wall easily, you want the 7-foot wall. You might not want a 10-foot wall. You don't want to go from 6 to 10, because there's a little bit too much of a learning curve. But you got the 6 foot wall nailed. You want to go to that 7 or 8 foot wall to challenge yourself. And one of the biggest flow triggers is that challenge skills, and it's also that timing. If you use music, that's why when you go to a nightclub, it can be easy to lose track of time if you're out on the dance floor moving around, is because you just are in, you're kind of getting into the rhythm, the timing, and all that. And that's, to me, one of the most important things about exercise is that ability to get into flow. And that's why it's important to do stuff that challenges you a little bit, to do stuff that gets you out of your comfort zone. And right now, I was just talking with somebody about this the other day. My older daughter's been training for junior lifeguards. She needs to be able to tread water for a few minutes and be able to do a certain number of laps in the pool. So we've been spending a lot of extra time in the swimming pool. Just like dancing, I'm not that good at swimming. I did swim team a couple years when I was a kid, and I can keep myself from drowning. But being in the pool with her and swimming with her is forcing me to be like, you know what, this is hard. I got to do more of this. I got to get out of my comfort zone. So I've been trying to get in the pool once a week for the last few weeks, and I'm nowhere. Trust me, Mr. Phelps, Michael Phelps, has absolutely no worries at all. But it does feel, what I like about it, in all seriousness, I like about it, it's like, okay, it's different. The water is different. It feels different. Again, my body, it feels different on my body, and I'm liking the challenge of like, okay, I got to remember how to do this. Crawl, breathe, stroke, and kind of get into the rhythm of it, because this is timing, Phil, that I haven't worked on. Probably last time I was on swim team, I was like 12 or 13 years old. So I'm having to tap into, I'm going back in the files of my hard drive and trying to look for those files from 30 something years ago and be like, okay, can I remember how to breaststroke? Can I remember?
They didn't have hard drives and files 30 years ago, Pete. Come on.
But I'm talking about motor, but I always use that as a motor engram, right? We store this information on the hard drive of our brain.
Yes.
And I always use the analogy that our muscles and our skeletal structures are hardware. If you look at our tissue and our skeletal structures, that's the hardware. The operating system is a nervous system. Our operating system is the brain, and the nervous system. Anytime we learn a new movement, we're downloading an app. Right? If you need to make your phone do something, you download an app from whatever, Google Store or Apple Store. But if we're learning an exercise, if you're learning how to do an obstacle, you're downloading the new software, the motor program for that obstacle. If I'm learning how to swim, I'm having to upload, I'm having to like relearn and reprogram the hardware how to swim and do timing. And that, when you learn that, when you push yourself out of your comfort zone, that's one way you can get into flow. And it really is. You're like, wait, how long have I been doing this? I thought I've been doing it 15 minutes. You end up been doing it for 35 minutes. And then I crashed that night because I'm so tired from playing in the water.
Right, exactly, because it's just play. It's play, and that's a topic for another day. But like the play that we lose as we age actually helps us. Well, not helps us, but accelerates our aging. There's one of the reasons that I take full creative license to not take myself too seriously, and have a good time. So you, switching gears real quick, and then I want to be respectful of your time, so I want to wrap up after that. But you've written several books, Smarter Workouts.
Not several, but thank you.
That's several. It's several, right? 1, 2. You've written a duo of books. Yeah. How about that? A pair of books. One is called Smarter Workouts: The Science of Exercise Made Simple, and the other one is called Ageless Intensity: Effective Workouts to Slow the Aging Process. And I mean, can you tell us a little bit which came first, and why did you feel the need to write these books?
Well, thanks for that. Smarter Workouts came first, and that really, Phil, that evolved from a series of I do a lot of writing for the American Council on Exercise. I write blogs, I write articles for them. And Smarter Workouts started as a blog series that I called One Weight Workout, meaning a workout for a medicine ball, a workout for a kettlebell. Because you and I both know, as a personal trainer, when the gym floor is busy, you grab a set of dumbbells and a stability ball and maybe a medicine ball, and you go in the corner and you work with your client. And that's all you need for your client for an hour. And so, having been a personal trainer and someone who educates personal trainers for years, I wrote Smarter Workouts to teach the reader how to get great workouts using only one piece of equipment. I kind of go through, obviously, the science of how the body adapts, and they'll learn core workouts like strength training workouts. They'll learn metabolic conditioning workouts and mobility workouts. And that kind of built up to Ageless Intensity. And just like as I've been talking about, I've been fascinated by, the last 20, 25 years of my career in the industry is too, Phil, when you look at it, how many times you go into a gym and you see people in their 50s and 60s still getting after it, right? They want to exercise. They
Yeah.
just because they turn 50 or 55 or 60, they don't want to stop. They're like, I still like to train. I want to sweat. I want to work hard,
Hmm.
but we don't know what we should be doing at that age. So what I did with Ageless was I try to go through the research about how exercise affects the aging body in terms of hormones, tissues, and try to give people a blueprint to say, if you're in your 50s and you've been working out for 30 years, good on you, number one. But number two, here's what you should be doing to maintain. And I talk about periodization. I talk about tissue treatment. Mobility is one. I have like the mobility was broken up into two chapters because it's so important. And
Hmm.
30, in my opinion, based on the evidence, that as we get older, 30% of our workouts should be mobility based. It kind of like, to use the IOM model, it should be just unloaded movement training. We're moving in three dimensions. And that's where I look at Zumba as like the ultimate. Zumba and yoga to me are the ultimate mobility exercises because you're
Yeah.
moving the body. And so in Ageless Intensity, I wanted to give people resources for, you're in your 50s, you're in your 60s, you've been going to the gym most of your adult life. You want to know what you should be doing now because you recognize the value of exercise, but you don't necessarily, and no offense for those of you under 30, but you don't necessarily want to get your information from somebody who's 27 years old when you're 58 or 62. I mean, that
Yeah.
just,
Screw that. I mean, no, take offense to that, youngsters, because y'all don't know what you're talking about. You haven't been 50, you haven't been 40 or 37.
well, you can have an idea, but I remember I remember being 27, 28 years old as a personal trainer, looking at some in their 50s going, take it easy, or you don't know, and you're
Yeah.
told to err on the side of caution. And so what I wanted to do is give people advice from somebody who's a washed up personal trainer who now writes crap instead of being in the gym for 6 hours a day. I mean, but let me ask you this question. How old are you, Phil? How old are
37.
so you're in that you and Phil. What's exciting about that is you came of age in the fitness industry when everything was high intensity, right? So everything
Yes.
was, let's get after it, let's work hard, and we are now we have a population of people, Phil. A friend of mine, my buddy Graham, said this. It's like an inverse U curve. Instead of being like the normal standard deviation, we now have a population of people who are either uber fit, like you, like people that are extremely fit, or people that are extremely unfit.
Yep.
There are very few people here in the middle that like, oh, okay, they exercise, whatever. That you're, and I'm talking more of your generation of like the 37, 38 and under generation who
Hmm.
came up during the CrossFit era. You guys are going to change. I mean, baby boomers and Gen X have been one way, but and I'm one of these people that I no longer, now that millennials, the older millennials are turning 40, I no longer pick on millennials. Now we can pick on Generation Z. But what I mean by that is your generation, Phil, has had a tremendous impact on the fitness industry. And now as you guys get into your 30s and 40s and you're going to be evolving, I'm really excited to see what you bring to the table of where you take your years of high intensity training, you take your years of OCR and all that experience, and how do you evolve it? And I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I mean, I learned so much by trying to look at and see how people are moving who are 10, 15, 20 years younger than me, because there's a lot I can pick up from that.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that it kind of brings us full circle is when we started our conversation, is weeding through the bullshit in the fitness industry. Is someone going to sell you a $10 program that is workout, and says, here's a food plan that, someone on Upwork made in Bangladesh and says 1,800 calories? Or are we going to take a little more responsibility with the information that we're floating out to whoever wants to listen, and say that, like, you can work out hard. However, I highly recommend that you warm up hard and recover hard as well. And listen to your body. That's where the group mentality numbs that out, or like in CrossFit. It's one of my big gripes with the group mentality of CrossFit. And well, yeah, just CrossFit, because that there's not much that's that intense. People who have I'm guilty of it myself. And it's just like, hey, your body's like, you might not want to, and you're just like, fuck it, let's do it. He's doing it, and you're doing it. I'm putting it up, and it's like, and now I'm hurt.
Well, once you get over, honestly, once you go, and I don't mean, I don't. This sounds a little ageist, and I don't mean it, but
Just
really, getting to over the age of 40 or 45 is when you really start listening to your body, and that's when you might think the brain says yes, but
yeah.
now when your shoulder says no, or your knees feeling funky, you say, you know what, I want to be able to move again tomorrow. So I'm gonna put the weight back in the rack, and instead of going to heavy today, I was gonna do heavy whatever. I'm not gonna go heavy today. I'm gonna go maybe use a cable machine and do a light workout because I recognize the fact that either A, I'm not fully recovered, B, I might have done something to something and it's not feeling 100%, but you learn how to say no. I mean, and that really is, I think one of the signs of maturity is really saying, you know what? Yes, I want to train hard, but you know what? Let me back off a little bit today. I'm going to take it a little bit easy today, and maybe tomorrow I'll come at it back hard again. And more often than not, Phil, in my experience, if I do that, if I take, like, say, for example, today is going to be, I want to train hard, but I get there and I get warmed up and I'm like, yeah, I'm not feeling it. And I back off and I just stay at a lower intensity. Tomorrow I'll be at 100% and ready to rock and roll.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that I think as we mature, we learn how to play the long game. And you mentioned that, right? It's the long game. I love the way you started out with that. And so we'll finish with that because when I look at this, I joke and I'm kind of half serious. I turn 50 next year. I have 20 more years in my macro cycle before I start entering the Senior Olympics as a sprinter. And I've never been fast in my life before. But if I can maintain my pace, if I can maintain my tissue elasticity, my strength, and my pace for the next 20 years, when I turn 70, I have a chance of winning a gold medal. But I joke about that. But in all seriousness, I plan out, like, what do I want to be doing in my 70s? What type of lifestyle do I want? I still want I had kids late. I didn't have my kids until I was 40 and 42. So I still, in the next 10, 15 years, as they're hitting their teen years, I want to be able to go hiking with them. I want to be able to go surfing with them. I want to be able to get out and enjoy life with them. That's why I train. I play the long game. So if that means going to the gym and realizing that, you know what, today's not going to be a hard day, let me, instead of crushing it for 20 minutes with a barbell like I was going to, let me take it easy and do kind of hill intervals on a treadmill for 20 minutes. It's going to allow me to reach that goal of being in it for the long game. And that just takes experience and learning how to listen to your body.
Longevity becomes so much more important as our vintage matures, so to speak.
But it's so true, right? I mean, that is my goal. My goal is to not have six-pack abs. My goal is to be fit in my 70s. And that's what
to have knees that work.
What's that?
To have knees that work.
Yeah, it truly 100%. The shoulders, I don't want I have friends that who are less than 40 your age who've already had bilateral hip replacements.
Jeez.
Todd Durkin has had he's had both knees replaced. That's no criticism on Todd's programming or anything. He played competitive college football and played in the NFL Europe for a season or two and thrashed his knees. If I do have to have a knee replaced, I want to put it off as long as possible because I've been very fortunate, knock on wood, to not to have any significant injuries like that. And so anybody listening, I would really just invite you to take that long view of your workout program and just listen to your body and sometimes give yourself a break.
Damn right. Well said, Pete. Let's wrap up at that, man. I want to thank you. I've got all your notes. Usually PeteMcCallFitness.com, All About Fitness podcast is your show. Pete MC _fitness is your Twitter. And I'm going to put that all in the show notes. One last question before we hop off here. What are you leaving for the world? What are you giving to the world? Could be the same question.
I like that. A different way to look at exercise. I mean, I really think where we failed people, Phil, as an industry, is we've made exercise about appearance as opposed to just what you said, longevity. You said it so well. Is exercise should be about health and longevity and wellness, and just being able to. You want to be able to grow up enjoying playing with your son. I want to be able to grow up enjoy playing with my daughter. exercise gives us the means to do that. So if I could leave anything for future generations, it's a way of looking at exercise as a means of living well, as opposed to achieving some media-driven appearance of what we should look like.
Pete McCall, you're the man. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Phil. Always a pleasure, bro, and I hope we run into each other soon.
I know we will.